everyone. I'm Captain Logan. Here is Connor Nielsen, and today we're going to tell you how we felt about Eternals. Of course, the latest movie from Marvel, from the MCU, based on work by Jack Kirby. And Connor, this is a thing that has been extremely divisive, somewhat surprisingly to me, so I'm sure it's going to really interest people to see where we land on this, because I had certain expectations going in that like I couldn't help myself because I had been hearing such negative stuff, particularly from the mainstream with this. I tried to stay away from that as much as I could, but I just kept hearing like it's the worst MCU movie in a long time, or possibly ever. But then I was hearing some of our friends in the Discord really liking it, and I was like, what is going on with this? How is this as divisive as it seems to be? So I'm fascinated to find out what Connor thinks about this movie. And Connor, I'm going to give you the unenviable task of giving me a like 3-sentence synopsis of this movie without spoiling anything, which should be a tall order because there are so many plot twists and revelations and things in this. I don't know that we can even review it without it being so cryptic that nobody knows what we're talking about. So I'm going to have Connor give us a synopsis, and then we're going to do, as quick as we can, 5-minute sign flips on this. So best thing, worst thing, sign flip from each of us, give you a sense of whether or not we think you should go see it if you haven't yet. And then we're not going to do a full-blown lengthy spoiler cast, but we are going to allow for spoilers for the rest of the conversation because I don't know how else to discuss this movie. Are you with me on this?
Yes, yeah. All right, I had a feeling you might pass the buck over to me for this one, so I've been practicing.
Okay, to be fair, I only did it because I was so long-winded with my introduction. I felt like it was time for someone else to start talking.
All right, so Eternals follows 10 titular Eternals. There is this thing called a Celestial named Ereshim, who is, for all intents and purposes, God, as he is known in the Judean Christian tradition, I would say. He created the earth, he created the stars, and now he has created the Eternals to fight what are called deviants. Deviants are these kind of weird-looking monster men or creatures in general. And there are 10 of them, 10 Eternals anyways. And so the Eternals are here on Earth. They are immortal. They never age. They are here and they are superpowered, each having their own unique superpower. And they have been here since the dawn of man, and they are still here to this day, never partaking in any of mankind's broad conflicts, which is why we are only now just hearing about them now. The film primarily follows Cersei, played by Gemma Chan. There is Icarus, played by not Sebastian Stan. It's actually Richard Madden. And along the way, there's also a bunch of people. We got a few I've never even heard of, but we have Brian Tyree Henry, who is from the Joker movie and Godzilla vs. Kong. There is Kumail Nanjiani, who lost a bunch of weight and got super shredded for this role. Salma Hayek, Angelina Jolie, probably the two most well-known actors in this, and Barry Keoghan, and 3 others who I don't remember the names of. But beyond that...
And those 2 ladies you just mentioned, I have to say, used surprisingly sparingly, considering their celebrity.
Yes. And this is directed and co-written by Academy Award winner Chloe Zhao, who had just made Nomadland, which she won Best Picture and Best Director for. And this, any other details I'm trying to picture out? Basically, deviants have shown back up, and the Eternals they have since dispersed. In the current day, they're not really together. They're sort of a family that has been broken up. And they need to get the gang back together to fight some deviants.
Because the deviants came back, yeah.
The deviants are back. And this is told primarily through an in medias res thing where we are getting their backstory from the dawn of man to current day, where we are jumping back and forth from the present day. Then that's how it's structured, right? We jump back to a point in time, back to present day, a more recent point in time, but still the distant past.
Up until a certain point. I mean, I would call those flashbacks before I would call it nonlinear, certainly. But they're given to you when they're, most relevant, I think, and also just in letting you get any sense of these characters' personalities before you're thrust into the narrative with them.
Hmm. So,
And that's a hard thing narratively to juggle, but yeah.
Captain Logan, how did you feel about Eternals?
Eternals for me was mostly a breath of fresh air. I have been this is sort of the MCU movie I've been waiting for in certain ways, because it felt like just a vision that somebody had, a really ambitious science fiction and kind of science fantasy idea that was just a movie somebody wanted to make, a story somebody wanted to tell. This doesn't feel real Marvel formula to me. I think it kind of subverts a lot of the standard kind of typical beats in a Marvel movie, and it takes a lot of risks, and it's not perfect. It certainly makes some narrative and structural mistakes. It's certainly not going to be for everybody, but that's one of the things I really liked about it, is that I don't think it's trying too hard to be super accessible, at exactly the same time as it's very intentionally going for a diverse cast with a lot of various representation. And I think it's really interesting that story-wise, it kind of doesn't care who's with it and if you're really digging on it or not. Like, it just seemed like a movie that this director, like a story that she really wanted to tell, and is hoping that there are other people like her that like it. And boy, do I respect that. And I've been wanting more of that kind of thing from the MCU. And this is the first time that I felt like I've really gotten that since maybe Black Panther. And even that, when you get to the third act, feels a little bit more Marvel formula. I know that there are. I'm hearing from some critics that completely disagree with everything I just said, and for them it's the exact opposite, which is really interesting that people are having that experience, because a lot of people are saying that, and I haven't seen this director's other movies, but a lot of people are saying that she's, pandering too much to the mainstream with this, and that she's gotten kind of, swallowed up in the Hollywood machine. And I didn't have that with this. For an MCU movie, I was really surprised by how much it's going its own way, and turning some standard superhero stuff kind of on its head a little bit. This is the first MCU movie that arguably kind of doesn't have a villain. Like, it sort of does, but it's really not about that. There's not like a big master plan in the background, and there's action, and some of the best action in Marvel movies in a while, I think. It's really fun seeing all those different superpowers juggled in single sequences, and a lot of the cinematography in those scenes is lovely and breathtaking. And I'm just impressed that it's got some of the best action in a while, but I really wouldn't categorize it as an action movie. Like, it's a science fiction epic before it's anything. Maybe unfortunate that it came out right after Dune, because obviously those are unfair things to compare, and really difficult not to, because they came out like weeks apart. It ain't Dune, but it's a pretty solid big sci-fi epic. I appreciate the length. I know there's folks that feel like it's too long, and it definitely in places kind of drags here and there. I'm not sure totally how you'd get around that. I guess I'm more okay with that, because it lets itself breathe long enough to let me get to know its 10 protagonists well enough. I mean, there are a couple of protagonists that it follows and kind of carry the movie more than others. There's kind of tiers of them, and not, well, I don't want to give that away yet, but they're certainly not all given as much screen time and given as much due as everybody else, but with 10 characters that I've never heard of, because this is not a property that I'm familiar with. And Austin and I were going to review some Eternals comics a couple weeks ago going into this, and we haven't gotten around to it yet. So I'm kind of glad that I came into this cold, honestly, because I was curious to see how generic I would find these characters I've just never heard of before. Who the heck is Icarus? Who the heck is Gilgamesh, and they were surprisingly unique and memorable. And I mean, there's a lot of them, so like all the character names are not going to stick with me right now. It's going to take a couple of viewings, but in the moment while I was watching it, I was surprised that I liked all of these characters well enough. The MCU humor, I don't think for the most part takes over too much. There's a little bit of that here and there. There's a couple places where it feels like almost we're intentionally trying to make the audience think we're going to go too far with the thing, and then it just goes away, and that's kind of nice. They do that thing where, like, you know, a cell phone interrupts the conversation, but it doesn't keep interrupting the conversation. It happens one time, and then we have the rest of the conversation. You still didn't need that gag, but it was weird. It was almost like she was trolling the MCU with some things like that. There is a real honest-to-God ethical conundrum here, where every character has their own unique opinion and feelings and worldview about it. And I understand, for the most part, how everybody gets to where they get, and there's a really good argument. And my favorite thing about this movie is when you get to the end, the movie leaves it ambiguous and completely up to you about whether or not the heroes even did the right thing at the end. That's really unusual. And I found myself not sure whether or not I agree with what the heroes do at the end of this movie. And that was a really cool place to be with an MCU movie, because it challenged me and it really made me think. So I am definitely feeling it with this one. I don't know if I'm going to have the same experience with it on multiple viewings. I don't know if the seams are going to start to show more and more as I watch it. I think the mythology and premise with this is pretty hackneyed, pretty convoluted, and there's kind of a set of rules that's really arbitrary and just getting us to why I keep wanting to call them Inhumans, why the Eternals are here in the first place and what exactly they are and everything is almost a bridge too far. It's pretty outlandish, and that's probably the weakest thing for me, is that there's kind of just too many like weird, impossible premises all built on top of each other, even for the MCU. It also, I'll say real quick, has that problem of too many historical explanations being these people, and I would expect a little bit of that, but I think it goes a little bit too far with that whole thing. But anyway, let's find out how Connor felt about this movie. I'm certainly flipping my sign green. Go ahead, man.
Yeah, so Eternals is great. I think this is honestly an easy pick for top 5 Marvel films. Maybe top 3. Look, we have actually, I don't think you and I have actually talked about the Marvel Cinematic Universe since WandaVision, Cap, at least not in any face-to-face way.
I guess not, yeah.
Because, you know, for those who don't know, I liked half of WandaVision. I thought Falcon and the Winter Soldier was like Suicide Squad 2016 levels of bad. I think that show is awful. I can't believe human adults made that. And I know Cap likes this. I was really not into Loki, and I thought What If was, you know, pretty darn bad as well. So honestly,
and Loki ain't perfect, man. It's problematic. That last episode should have been 5 minutes long, but
my thing with Loki is I feel like all the stakes and potential consequence of every episode, by the time you get to the next episode, they say, who cares? Forget about that. That was last week. Forget about it. But when it comes to it, when it comes to the Marvel movies, I've honestly been pretty what's the word I'm looking for? I've not been too impressed. And as far as the movies are concerned, Black Widow, I think I'm on the exact same page with you, Cap. That's like a straight 5 out of 10 for me. I like things about it, but by the end, I'm just not into it. And I think that honestly, like, Black Widow and Shang-Chi have like the exact same structure, like virtually the same structure, where the main character is basically a supporting character by the end of the movie. The middle act is nothing but lore and backstory building, and the final act is just a bunch of, you know, battle sequence CGI. I stopped caring. And the first act of both of those movies are my favorite parts of both of those movies. So when it came to Eternals, I was honestly not too excited because I was just feeling like it was just going to be more of the same of what I've been expecting. After the apocalyptic, what feels apocalyptic promise at the end of Loki of multiverse, everybody, I'm sitting here thinking, no, please, God, no. This is the future of the Marvel Universe I want. I think that, particularly where this movie leaves off, it left me wanting even more. Um, to just speak specifically about this movie, I think this is the movie Zack Snyder's been trying to make every time he makes a superhero movie. I think this is. I think I finally get what George Lucas was doing with his presentation of the prequels in terms of how stilted and weird everyone is in that. And I think I can't believe it. Like, this is the first time I felt this way since Guardians of the Galaxy 2. I feel like a director made this movie and it was the director's movie. I feel like I have not felt that way since Guardians 2. I think the only other movies that really fall into this category are the first two Guardians movies and Iron Man 3. But I think importantly, those feel more like the vision of a writer before it feels like the vision of a director. From the top down, visually speaking, this looks like Chloe Zhao bringing her unique camera to the Marvel universe. And I was talking about this with my brother. Specifically, I can't believe Chloe Zhao is the filmmaker who best understands Jack Kirby than any other filmmaker who's really been like, yes, she is filtering his craziness through her kind of dreamy, naturalistic lens. But when it comes to like what was influencing him, she is right in touch with the ancient aliens, chariots of the gods kinds of things. And when it comes to the production of this movie, she seems to be reaching into other filmmakers who have been into those same things. So I do notice a lot of Zack Snyder influence in a good way. I do notice a Ridley Scott influence. I do notice a George Lucas influence. But that being said, it still feels like her. And she has a very Terrence Malick-y style. Some people might know who that is, some people might not, but she has a very dreamy quality to it. And I found this refreshing. I liked how they gave enough time to what was happening to just let it happen. And I applaud Kevin Feige and everyone to just let her do her thing for something that nobody knows anything about. I don't know anything about Eternals. Most people I know don't know anything about Eternals. So,
and even more than Guardians. Because that was a thing I had at least read something of somewhere. Like, Eternals I had barely heard of.
And I think that the performances are uniformly impressive, particularly Brian Tyree Henry. I don't know. I was really on board with this thing. As far as anything negative to say, I think the first 30 minutes are a little clunky. When you read any
and
book,
such a tall order too is the thing. Yes. Like the ambition goes a long way in my mind to kind of, if not covering that, making it kind of understandable. It's like Suicide Squad, I mean the first one really has no excuse when a thing like this gets made. As far as introducing characters and not being able to juggle them all, like...
Yeah, I would say that when it comes to Eternals, whenever you read a book or you take a class or whatever, or watch a YouTube video about screenwriting or dialogue particularly, what you're told to avoid is Q&A dialogue. There are like 3 scenes in a row, like not off the top, but second, off the top, where it is 3 scenes in a row of people just standing perfectly still. They don't even have any business staring at each other, just question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. And I was thinking, oh no, what are we in for? But once the plot mechanics move past that, I still felt like there was like a little bit of a stiltedness and roboticness to the characters. And then there's a reveal as to why. And then from that point on, I was so into this. I applaud Marvel Studios for actually releasing this. And look, everyone jot the timestamp down, because this could very easily go into poorly aged things. But I think critics are taking a big L on this one, and this will be critically reappraised really hard.
I wanted to make the very same note. Yep. Yep, I totally agree with that. I think down the road this gets totally reevaluated by some folks that are hating it right now. And again, no disrespect to anybody if this wasn't your thing, or you really just felt like these characters were too wooden and stilted and didn't get enough character development and progression. Personally, I was surprised by how realized 10 characters were able to be in this.
Yeah, so I'm saying I'm feeling it. Where do you want to go from here?
So this will be the spoiler section of this video. We're not necessarily going to always do this when we do how we felt about it now that we've brought this back, but getting into a little bit more discussion back and forth now, I just wanted to allow for spoilers because, like I said, there's some stuff I want to talk about here that I don't know how to do without spoilers. So I don't know if I want to get into mythology and lore stuff right off, Connor. Well, let me real quick mention a thing that made me so happy and excited with this, and then give you a theory that I have of something that's going to happen down the road in the MCU. I love, by the way, this fills in some history blanks. It's the first time that we've gone like all the way back to the dawn of time in the MCU. It's really fun to see a movie that completely stands on its own, and in some ways doesn't seem to care about the rest of the Marvel universe. It's not really a crossover thing, of course, and then at the same time is pulling the curtain back so hard. Like, I think it's so appropriate that Guardians did that with the cosmic stuff in a comedy, and then this does it with more of the stuff that Guardians was doing. Like, we see the head of a Celestial. What the heck is that? Now we've got what those are, and then it does it with a like more or less pretty serious drama. There's levity. It's for the most part pretty good at that, but this is not of course the kind of comedy that the Guardians was. But anyway, you've got the Celestials in this, and like I said, we're filling in some gaps, even though this thing watches like very much its own film, to the point where my son actually Jason saw this with me and adored it, and he doesn't agree with the thing that you said when you said you wanted more of it. He said, "Boy, I wish they wouldn't sequel bait this. I love that it's its own thing." He was like, "I don't want any more of this." He said it stands. Jason is surprisingly thoughtful for an 11-year-old. He's like it's such a cohesive piece. Like I don't need any more of that. And I don't know that I fully agree with or disagree with that. Like. When at the end it says the Celestials will return, I'm like, I mean, I guess I liked these people, so that's cool. But it was also nice to just watch a movie.
Mm-hmm. There are touches that do feel so like I'm watching something new and fresh. Batman and Superman are just straight up referenced in this thing,
yeah.
And I know that'll probably break your brain cap because of your analytical thing. For me, it was just like, oh, this feels like Spider-Man referencing Shazam or something, where like there's
no,
possibility.
That doesn't break my brain at all. In fact, I like that we finally did it in the MCU, because the more fantasy-esque superheroes should exist in a world that was, as far as we understood it, more or less grounded before superheroes started showing up. There should be comic book superheroes in this world. That were in comic books, and it's appropriate that it's DC stuff instead of Marvel-esque stuff, because that's the more classically like fantasy-driven stuff. So in a world that seems more or less like the one we're living in, those are the superheroes that should exist. No, that doesn't break my brain at all. I'm glad that's there.
Okay, cool. I will say I'm completely with you on the conflict. I don't know what the right thing to do in this movie is.
It's so great. I couldn't begin to tell you.
I believe where everyone falls on it, though.
Yeah.
And like that's what's cool. I don't know. I was kind of, and one thing I will say I like. Oh, sorry, what were you gonna say?
Oh, just let's get to that in a second. Because I was setting up a whole thing earlier and then I never got to it because I went down rabbit holes. The Celestial thing is so exciting to me because I feel like I'm seeing shades of Galactus finally. Because I'm such a big Galactus guy, and when we get I forget his name, but when we get the Celestial that's ostensibly supposed to be running and controlling the Eternals at the end of this, like standing in space in a very Jack Kirby-esque, like he might as well have drawn it himself, kind of moment. I'm like, so this this universe is just gonna straight up give us Galactus the way I've always wanted to see it. And like, I wouldn't have put that past them in the first place, of course, with Guardians, but it was really nice to finally get to kind of see the like groundwork for it. I have a theory. I think Galactus will be a Celestial. I think they'll say that he's like a rogue one, because it's and I don't know if I don't know if they'll think of this, but it seems right there to me, because the way they're born and what they do to planets is reverse Galactus.
Mm-hmm. Oh, interesting.
Like, Galactus is a force of nature that goes around and eats planets to survive. And the Celestials, in order to be born in the first place, have to destroy planets. And it's just the nature of the universe, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's a force of... Like, it's reverse Galactus. Galactus should be a Celestial in this universe.
That'd be great. Absolutely. And, I mean... I know people say, "Oh, he has a totem pole head. You can't make him not look ridiculous." I don't know. I thought the Celestials looked really cool in this.
They did these, and Galactus doesn't look any goofier than they do. So,
yeah.
Anyway, I just wanted to get that point in there.
Yeah, and I wanted to respond to something you had said earlier, as far as like the action is concerned. This felt like, there's like an extended action scene in this movie that's in the woods, and it reminded me of a Fox X-Men movie, except it looked like 5 times better than the Fox X-Men movies where they just go out into the woods and start fighting.
Yeah.
I did not expect Chloe Zhao to be a good action filmmaker, and the special effects are very impressive in this movie. They look really, really good. Better than, like, I don't know, I feel like since we've started making 3 Marvel movies a year, I started noticing this in Thor Ragnarok and Black Panther. The special effects, I feel like, have really taken a hit with that. We got to crank these out.
Yep.
Visually, this time around, I had barely any of that. And I think a lot of that comes down to they are shooting on location for a lot of this movie, and they take full advantage of that. I don't know, you're not familiar with her other films, but they're virtually plotless, basically. They're like meditative, introspective movies. And so I get why some critics might say this is just her like bending the knee to like whatever. I say I don't know. I can maybe understand why somebody would say this. I think she just has a whole nother bag of influences she wants to reach into, because you've seen me do
this was an outlet for her.
Yes,
you could kind of tell, and I feel like she brings that introspective kind of style to the characterization, where it's more character driven than a lot of these have been lately. And I appreciate that it's so relationship driven. Like it's much more about family dynamics than these have really been, and certainly in a while. And I appreciate that it's got like some blood pumping in its veins a little bit. Like, I've been nervous that the MCU is just done with romances. Not here.
Yes.
Like this is gonna sound really callous, but I mean this in a relationship kind of way. Like, people have sex in this movie. Thank God. Like, that's life. Where has that stuff been? I do think it's weird that we're finally doing that with a big diverse group of what are essentially robots that have human characteristics for almost no good reason. And that's where I get into saying that I
might disagree with you there.
Okay, go ahead. Why? Because I don't understand why the Celestial sets things up exactly the way it does. I do like the idea of you couldn't control the deviants. They evolved. They were like kind of monsters that evolved too far, and now they're dangerous and hard to control. So you went with human beings that maybe, I wish we talked about this more, maybe free will is an important component of all that. I don't know, but like, why can't they just be completely programmed in the first place? Why do you leave them on Earth when the deviants are ostensibly destroyed? Why can't you just bring them back to Earth if the deviants came back? I have a lot of, why do they all have different and like it plays wonderfully for the various relationships, and is not heavy-handed and mature, and all the this is the best a movie like this has handled diversity in my mind in a really long time. You have a homosexual relationship with a couple of guys that I really like, and we just present it, and we're not talking about it, and we're not trying to change anybody's minds about anything. It's just there. I love all that. This is how you do that stuff. But why? But why did the Celestial make them that way? Why do they already have accents like they were from all these various places on Earth when they first get there during caveman times? I don't understand any of that.
Yeah, and apparently English is the language of the gods. So
yeah,
but this isn't going to answer all.
And they talk like they're from 2021 in the Dark Ages.
Yeah, well, I'll say I can't have answers to all those questions. Those are all very, very good questions. And what I like about when you're watching them at first, especially when they're doing the flashbacks, they seem a lot more robotic. I think it's like Blade Runner, having memories has made them more human. And so having that interactions with humans allows them to like become slightly different. They sort of change over time, very pretty slowly. But like that first interaction with Cersei and Icarus is so robotic. Like it feels like a prequel scene where, hello, my name is Icarus. Isn't it beautiful? But then later
it's real detached and cold, and I'm with you. Like that whole thing works, but can't we contrive in a more believable way, like just why the Celestial made them the way they are? Like
that's a good point.
That takes me out pretty hard. I don't understand
why have 10 of them with unique powers when you could have one of them with all their powers. Like But, those are questions I guess I don't necessarily need the answers to, but I mean, those are definitely good questions to have, for sure.
Well, it's just, it gets pretty contrived. I found myself distracted by, and some of this isn't bad. This is what's really funny. It's a double-edged sword, because the thing I'm about to reference, I found some like really positive things in it being like this, and some negative things in it being like this. I was distracted by all the comparisons I was making to The Matrix, which I realize I do with everything, but I really had it with this. First of all, it has the exact same problem. This is why I had to do spoilers with this video. It has exactly the same problem the Matrix has, in that it needs human beings for an energy source on a planet that has a whole bunch of animals that you could just use them, and there's lots of, you could use fusion, there's a lot of other power sources, so we have to wait until inevitably, and I don't know how you could be sure this is going to happen, but you have to wait until inevitably we have 8 billion people on the Earth, which is going to take thousands of years, because because it's not until industry that we start procreating like rabbits and have that many people on the planet. And apparently every planet develops exactly the same way, and the Celestial knows that that's going to happen. And the reason you have to have that many people before the Celestial can be born is because you need the energy of all of those people, the people themselves, to make that happen, and then the planet explodes, and then you have a Celestial. It's a boy or a Celestial, because I don't know if they have gender. But anyway,
it's a gold one. Woohoo!
Yeah, exactly. So it has that Matrix problem where it's like, do the machines really need to use human brains as batteries? Like, at least there they have the irony thing where they're doing it as like a form of revenge. You don't have that with this at all, so like I don't fully understand why it has to be that. Again, it's pretty contrived, but it's also the Matrix in a good way, in the sense that it's about this group of people that has to kind of like wake up to what reality really is, where they don't understand what's really happening, and they're in something of a like kind of fictional world in a more metaphorical way. So I don't know, like there's a surprising amount of Matrix in this movie.
For sure. I mean, I would not doubt that would be in. It's some that's just sort of like in that material of. Kind of what Kirby's looking at, and I'm pretty sure what she's looking at. I mean, as far as like action blockbusters, you would be hard pressed to not, like, because you always draw connections to the Matrix. That was a big, touchstone for a lot of not just audiences but creators in general. But no, you're right. Well, we're a little over half an hour. Is there anything else you wanted to say about the film?
I mean, there's so much stuff we could go into. I like that. We'll go a little bit. We're trying to make these closer to half an hour. We'll go a little over time with this one because there's so much here. I really like that we have another kind of deconstruction of Superman that's not straight up evil. I mentioned earlier that we don't have exactly a villain in this. The Deviant is as close as we get. And by the way, when you were talking earlier about special effects, for the most part, it's wonderful. There's some creature effects that are not great in the face. Major Uncanny Valley with the mid-credit scene with Pip, I thought that looked awful. Like,
oh yeah,
really awful.
I'm talking about the movies, but Pip looks dreadful. Yeah, no, I would agree.
But even like the Deviant itself, once it gets like personified characteristics, I think looks kind of dreadful in the face, and that was a little bit unfortunate. But anyway.
But did he look like he walked off the Polar Express like Pip the Troll?
No, it wasn't quite that bad, but that's how low your standards are getting at this point with the Uncanny Valley thing. But anyway, I like that you have. So you kind of subvert your expectations where this guy seems to be kind of just Superman. He is certainly more brutish than Superman, but by and large, it's kind of that character. And then it turns out that he not only is on the other side of the moral debate from a lot of our heroes, not all of them, because they're on a spectrum with this, just like the moral conundrum in Black Panther, and a lot of the major characters in that all felt differently about how Wakanda should deal with isolationism. In this, it's should we let the world be destroyed or not? It's the utilitarian question for the sake of all of the worlds that could be created later by the Celestials. Is it worth saving the people that are here and now for what will happen in the future, or is it a reprehensible act to let those people die in order for that to happen? And like Connor and I both said already, I don't know the right answer to that. And I like that when you get to the end of the movie, nobody's comfortable with it. And your Icarus character knows from almost the beginning, and we didn't realize it until more than halfway through the movie, that why they were really there, and that they weren't really there to save the humans from the deviants, but to make sure that the Celestial comes to life and that we destroy the planet. He's not straight up bad, even though he kills a couple of people, and including some of our characters, and does awful things. But he ends up helping them to save the world anyway. And then I think it's wonderfully ambiguous. And it might read too obvious and on the nose, but when he goes into the sun, because he's Icarus, so he has to fly too close to the sun, and then he dies as Icarus. I want to roll my eyes at that, but I think I might kind of love it, Connor. The more I've thought about it, because there's this ambiguity just on a first viewing. Maybe I'll feel differently about it later. Of did he do that? Is the whole flying too close to the sun thing, like, what is the metaphor there? Is it that about his hubris in trying to let the Celestial be born in the first place, and that makes him playing God too much? Or is he punishing himself for caving, where like he knows that he's done the wrong thing, but ultimately he couldn't help but come to the aid of his friends and his family, and that was the part where he flew too close to the sun? And like, I don't know the answer. I think either of those is valid.
And the thing I was thinking about is, would going into the sun actually kill him? Because I mean, no, but seriously, I was thinking about All-Star
That's a good Superman, question. I don't know.
Where he's like going into exile into the sun, like All-Star Superman. So like I was.
Oh, maybe he's not dead, is what you're saying.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like but like I said, there's ambiguity, like both like character-wise, like thematically what you were talking about, and I think in the material, is he dead or not? I liked all that. And I will say, you often joke that, look at Marvel is doing Superman better than DC with Captain America. Now we're doing Snyder's Superman better than Snyder's.
We're doing evil Superman even better than. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's
I thought Icarus was a fantastic antagonist in this. I think Richard Madden is like a. You watched Rocket Man. He was in that, and now he's also in this. And I just thought he was just some like generic hot guy, no, this guy can like actually act. Like he's really good. I want to see more of him.
I'll go as far as to say he could have played Superman. If they ever make, and I'm not saying I want this because we've done so much of the superhero, dark deconstruction stuff. But if we ever make Supreme Power, he should be Hyperion. I realize he would be typecast, but like he's basically playing a version of that in this kind of. And I thought he was really interesting. But yeah, it's another thing I wanted to mention real quick is when you get to the end, I think actually talking about whether or not we did the right thing makes or breaks the movie. If that scene's not there, the whole thing doesn't work, thematically anyway. Like, I'm so glad that conversation's there, where it's like, we saved the world, is that even a good thing? I love that. So, and that covers a multitude of sins for me, because I'm having such a hard time with some of the mythology with this. I talked about some of that, but you've also got like, why does the I keep going back to this, like, why does the Celestial wipe their memories every time? Like, is it that he expects that once they realize what's really happening, that they'll turn on him, but like, you're risking their finding out about it at some point and doing exactly what they do anyway? Like, I don't know. There's just that stuff. If the thematic and character stuff wasn't working for me, I would say faulty premise and kind of write this movie off, because it is built on definitely some faulty premises.
Well, that's the sort of thing, is like, I don't know. There's the big God question at the center of it, right? You could look at like any religious like framework and say, if you question like a religious person's beliefs, and like why would God do X, Y, or Z? Well, it's kind of like a root of the belief. It's like one of those things where it's like, I know I'm pleading, it's just a conceit on like 50 different things, but I feel like a lot of that is in what's his name, Arisham's corner. Like, I don't know why Erisham does what he does, but I found myself willing to give the movie that, because you are right, a lot of this is built around characters and their own interpersonal relationships, just kind of given this status quo of how like the being Eternals works. I will say though, I thought it was great that a character just straight up says, I'm not participating at all. And he stays gone.
Yeah, it's
which
great.
Was impressive, and because that's the comic relief guy. Yeah, and he takes off, and he actually stayed out. And I thought Kumail Nanjiani was great in this movie. I didn't want him cracking wises in the climax of the movie, and he doesn't.
And he doesn't. No, you're right. That's great. And he is funny, and there are places where it borders on maybe going a little bit too far, but I think that is pretty well balanced for the most part. I expected the typical, well, he's going to keep being funny all the way through, and then he's going to have the big epic sacrifice at the end, and that doesn't happen either.
That could have been bad, too. Yeah. But also, I found myself asking this question to my friends after we walked out of it. I can't remember the last time I've asked this question. I was like, hey, who's your favorite Eternal? Because I like all of them.
Yeah.
And, like, I can't remember the last time I've had that conversation. Like, it makes me feel like a kid again of, oh, who's your favorite character on the team? And a friend of mine said, I feel like I watched the good Justice League movie. Because it kind of... I would say it does sort of have shades of Justice League, because we are sort of dealing with the more like pantheon of characters that are sort of representative of mythology and gods and stuff.
A lot of people are making X-Men comparisons, and I think it might just be because everybody's like hidden and have separate superpowers, and you've got some personal conflicts, kind of like mutants, with the girl who's not allowed to age. Who's, that's very roguish, right? Where it's like, my powers are kind of a detriment. I wish I wasn't immortal. All of that. I thought the way that was handled at the end, where they just had a little bit of energy left, so now that she can grow up, that was a little easy.
I was really confused by how that's even possible.
I didn't get that at all. No, that watched a lot like a Star Trek episode where it's like somebody turns into a lizard, and then you have a doctor that just hits him with a hyperspray, and now they're a person again. Like it really watched it like that.
I just happen to have a little energy left over. You're a real boy. All right, cool, awesome.
Yeah, so I don't know. I didn't need that, but so I get why people are making the X-Men comparison. But I'm with you. I saw it as a lot more like figuring out a way to do DC type characters in more of a Marvel fashion, like traditional godlike DC type characters, which is really appropriate with this property because the Eternals was Kirby getting his New God series canceled at DC and going to Marvel to do basically the exact same thing but with a different property, which also got canceled before he could finish his story. And so it's really appropriate that this is kind of a DC movie with a Marvel spin.
Yeah, I would agree. I would recommend anybody watching this who has not seen it or is on the fence, I would say go see it. Big thumbs up.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm having more issues with it than Connor, but I did really, really enjoy it. I think. I wanted to ask you the question that you brought up a minute ago because you didn't answer it, and I'm not sure what mine is. Do you have a favorite character? Because I don't always do this for stuff, but these are all people we were just introduced to that we've never seen before, and I think it's hard to do.
I would say I like Festus. Great. He's sort of like the mechanic of the crew.
He's and the standout for a lot of people, it seems.
Like his like, he gets a chance to just act his heart out.
Mm-hmm.
Great job there in 1940.
I was going to say World War II is what you're talking about, right?
Yeah. And then, but I would say I think my favorite character might be Druid.
Apparently, he gave us the atomic bomb. I don't know.
Yeah, or at least like the atomic bomb was set in motion by his works, and he feels guilt over that, which I think is great payoff for kind of where that thread starts. But I think Druid might be my favorite. Played by Barry Coing, who was I
was going to bring him up. He's up there for me too.
He was in Dunkirk. He was in Killing of a Sacred Deer. He was in The Green Knight earlier this year. He's a really good, like, kind of up and coming actor right now, who I was very impressed by.
I thought he was going to be my least favorite because he is really brutish and angsty, and he can take over everybody's mind on the planet if he wants to, and he ends up leaving the group because they don't want him to control people too much. And I'm like, well, you don't have a movie now because that guy would just go take over the whole world. Why doesn't he do that? And then they freaking answer that question. And there's a lot of that in this movie, by the way, where with character motivation stuff, which is why it still works okay for me, despite some of the weird plot things or weird mythology things where I'll be asking a question and then seconds later, the movie actually has an answer for it, and that's really nice. But yeah, he was really interesting. I also really like the deaf girl a lot.
Yes, she was cool. And I like how it's just implied that she's deaf probably because of her powers.
Yeah, like, but they don't talk about it at all.
They don't talk about it. It's really cool. That's the kind of stuff about this movie that I found very captivating.
I have a question. Was she using American Sign Language from the very beginning, or was it because I don't know sign language, so I kept thinking like, did they make up a version of sign language and then she transitions to? I'm pretty sure it's just American Sign Language, but I don't know sign language, so I'm not sure.
I don't know. That's a good question, but hey, considering English is the language of the gods in this movie, I will say, I think so.
And I liked Angelina Jolie a lot in this. I like how wonderfully understated she is, and kind of a tragic character. And I like that her memory loss and that driving her kind of crazy comes from a place. And also, I think she's just really good at acting with special effects.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm buying that the swords are actually really there when it's just CG. Like, I don't know, she really commits to that whole thing. She was. It feels like the big actors that are in this movie were cast because they were right for roles. It felt very Pixar in that way.
I would agree. Yeah, I was honestly surprised that the inciting incident is Salma Hayek's dad. I was like, what? Huh?
She gets taken out real quick.
She's your headliner. Like, whoa, what are we doing here? But no, I think maybe that's like a self-aware reason for the casting, right? Because, well, what's your headliner? Take him out. I'm my interest is peaked. But I would agree with you that I was also impressed by Angelina Jolie. I think the bit with her character, she has like a bit of a mental illness that's largely just due to a bunch of memories just crowding on top of one another, has like made her like sort of bipolar.
Well, again, they're kind of
Or something.
robots, so it's like a system failure thing. It's like a software failure issue,
Yeah, yeah.
and then that
So,
translates to a mental disorder.
so I thought that was really cool, and her
I
dynamic
did too.
with Don Lee. That's his North American acting stage name. He comes from, I believe, Korea or Indonesia, but uh, yeah, but like their whole dynamic was really really good, and yeah, I was impressed that Angelina Jolie was not the star of this, or like she's not the secret villain, or she's not any of that. Like she's just there, and that was cool.
So my very last point, which should have been my very first point, is that this is the most like unabashedly comic booky movie that MCU has made in a long time, and in some ways, ever, with the exception of the Guardians movies, where it's not afraid of doing the kind of out there weird stuff. And I think some of the folks that are really put off by this movie might be, and I'm not saying that like if you're a comic reader, of course you love this movie. I'm sure there's comic fans that also don't like this, but I imagine that some of it is just things that you would also really resist in comic books, and I just have a lot of respect for that. That like they're not afraid of that stuff.
I found this movie.
I
One thing
worry that
I was
because I worry that because it's so polarizing, we won't keep getting stuff like this, and that really bugs me because like if it's their least successful movie, at least critically, if not commercially, then they might not take this kind of risk again, and like I'm concerned about that. But
I would be heartbroken if we get the future promised by Loki and not the future promised by this.
yeah,
And it's looking like that's what's going to be the case. And at the
could
very
you
least,
could you have both maybe? Because I think you could.
I hope so. But like it's one of those things where I never thought a Marvel movie would give me this sense of satisfaction again.
Yeah.
And I'm just honestly I'm just glad we got it. But I
Same
will
here.
say, like, to what you were saying about its comic bookiness, it's so unafraid of looking ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of does, but that's the secret to its success. Like, you have all these characters sort of in Power Rangers, like color coordinated Power Rangers costumes, like with stern faces, and only like one comic relief character doing their thing. Like, hats off. I was impressed.
And nobody, and this has become too much of an MCU thing. At no point does anybody go, these costumes look stupid.
Yes. Yeah, precisely.
Like they just play it straight, and this is just the world they live in. And it helps that they came there with that, so they look like they were out of a comic book going all the way to the dawn of time, which we did with the Thor movies too. And people were really impressed with that. Where it's like, oh, you did Loki right off the page. You just have the horns, but now we can't help but make fun of the horns. And things like that. I'm not saying that specifically, but just too often somebody will have to come right out and be like, "That's dumb. Why are you wearing that? Or why are you doing that kind of thing?" And this movie's like, it's kind of like I don't know. I just have a lot of respect for her because she obviously loves comics and loves this material, and she didn't pitch the premise to do Eternals to them because they were looking for a director to make this, but she came in and had done her homework and did a whole like massive pitch for what the movie could be, which is why she got it. Apparently she had like visuals upon visuals and just had like this massive crazy presentation and like really wanted to do this property specifically, and they need to make more things that way. Like they should really just be waiting for the director that comes in, kind of like the girl that didn't get the role, I forget who it was, for Catwoman in Batman Returns, that like came in like in the full they came in the full on cat suit. Like they need to wait for the director that's crazy enough to do that kind of thing every time they make a movie, that's just that passionate about the thing, because that's how you got this.
Yeah, because apparently she declined doing Black Widow because she wanted to do this. And well, what's crazy to me is like apparently Kevin Feige was super impressed. I mean, you just look at what they let her do. Like, compare this to I don't know, Ant-Man and the Wasp. Like, to me, they're completely night and day. But what's cool to me is that uh, like Nomadland hadn't even been a thing when she started making this movie. So like her big awards in the movie she made before Nomadland, The Writer, I mean, it got some Sundance attention, but it got no year-end like attention whatsoever from like all of the award circuit. So they like
Wow.
I am very impressed that they did that because she worked because I think production or whatever got delayed because of COVID for this movie. She finished editing Nomadland while during COVID, and so like that's why that movie was able to come out when it did. And now they're able to like market this movie off of her success and being this like Oscar winner and all this stuff. So I didn't think that Marvel had that muscle in them, and apparently they do. And again, I keep saying it, but I was impressed by pretty much everybody when it came to this film.
Well, anyway, this ended up being an hour because, of course, it did. But thanks a lot for watching, everybody. We sure appreciate it, and we will see you again real soon with another one. We have not done a video on Dune yet. People keep asking me about that. We're going to try to finally get to that next week and just weigh in real quick on a movie that everybody's seen already and will be a month old by the time we do it. But in the meantime, thanks a lot for watching. I was Captain Logan. This was Connor Nielsen. And Connor, thanks a lot for reviewing it with me. I sure appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
And exciting that we were both on the same page on this, because of course we obviously, I mean, part of the reason it's fun to do these with you is that you don't always flip your sign the same way that I do, and I honestly, leaving the theater, wasn't sure where you'd be on this, so it was kind of fun that since we're a little against the grain on this, we both are. That was kind of fun.
Yeah, no, absolutely. When I walked out of this, I got to be honest, I had no idea where you would fall on it because I was thinking like this was great. I might have to take a heel turn on the channel and be a go against the grain what you were doing. But I'm glad we were both able to have a good time with it.
Austin sent me a message after he saw it, and he was like, "You're gonna love that movie."
Really?
Yeah,
oh, cool.
He knew for sure it was my kind of thing.
Awesome.
Which
well,
is really,
I guess,
I guess he knows me better than I know myself. But
look,
yeah,
I am not a good gift giver, and that's largely because like even when it comes to like movies, I have no idea how to recommend them to anybody because I don't know, I'm so bad at it.
Anyway, thanks again, folks. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.